Hello, I'm Donnie Swaggart, and welcome to another edition of Backstage. Well, once again, I'm having Brother Jim Woolsey as my very special guest. He was on a few weeks ago as we brought you into Africa, shared with you some of the things about Africa and the ministry that we've done there. But today, want to take you to a place that, if you've never been to India, there's really no way to describe it. Over 1 billion people. I was in India preaching just a few years ago. And I remember the first day waking up early before daylight. Didn't mean to, but I just kind of walked over to the window, opened the drapes, and was just looking out on the horizon. And as the sun, and there was nobody, it was still, you didn't see anybody. And there was enough light, you could make out everything, but there really wasn't anybody walking around. But all of a sudden, as the sun began to rise, it was like the earth just opened up and began to regurgitate people. And in a moment's notice, it was like so many people, it was like swarms coming, going. The noise began to come, cars mingling with trucks, motorbikes, people walking, wagons with cows pulling, no stop signs, no red lights. And if they did have red lights, they didn't work half the time. And if they worked, nobody paid attention to them. I learned to pray through every time I got in the car, because in India it was whoever has the loudest horn and the heaviest foot. It was just unreal. I mean, you were pleading the blood every time you got in the car. But we were involved in India, primarily in Calcutta, for many years. And Mark Buntain was the missionary. He's gone on to be with the Lord. Probably one of, if not the greatest missionary that the Assemblies of God ever produced. A man who literally gave his life for India. How did we get involved?
Well, years ago, this was before I was with the ministry here, we were in Guatemala. But if I understand correctly, Brother Swaggart had met Brother Mark Buntain, and Brother Mark Buntain invited your mother and father over there, and they went to visit him. They had a small camera crew with them, and I'd like to jump ahead just a little. At the end of all of those days, they were with him, and they saw quite a bit at that time and the need. And Brother Mark, when they asked him what the needs were, your father asked him, Brother Swaggart asked him, how could we help you? And when he told him the different things they needed help with, the feeding of those that don't have any meals, the poor, the orphanage, the hospital, all kinds of things, day school, well then, and they needed more schools. Your father went back and actually started to raise funds and help Brother Mark Buntain. Brother Buntain told him this. He said, Brother Swaggart, many people came here and they took pictures of the poverty and what we're doing here and promised to help. Not one of them helped us but you.
We met Brother Mark in Carlinville, Illinois.
That's it.
And it was in a summer months. Dad was the night speaker of this family camp, and Brother Buntain was the morning speaker. He had a voice that was like gravel because of the damage of all the pollution and breathing the pollution of Calcutta. That was our first introduction to him. He was someone that you never forgot. We were staying on the grounds. My room was next to his room. He would wake me up at all hours of the night praying. I could hear him praying through the wall. And it was a few years later that we went, and it was Mother, myself, and Dad, and about 3 or 4 others. And I'll never forget when we landed in Calcutta. Culture shock is not the word for it. Calcutta is a landmass made for about 2 million people, and it's nearly 15 million people crowded into it.
Right.
And got off the plane, walked in to the airport terminal to go through immigration, and there were cows in the airport terminal just walking through. I mean, it was surreal.
Yeah.
Got to the hotel. The next morning, I got up because of the time change. You wake up at weird times. And I got dressed, went outside, daylight again. We were staying at the Oberoi Grand. I still remember the name, and that's, this was years ago. And I remember they had a doorman. He was a Sikh, the ones, the long beard that they pull up, and turban. He had a royal, very regal uniform. And I walked out, and he spoke English. We were talking. And I'm standing there, and a truck is driving. And where the front entrance of the Oberoi Grand, there was a intersection. And the truck stopped, and it was one of these times that is surreal, that you're looking at something, and your brain is trying to compute, to rationalize what you're seeing because it's such a shock. It was a huge truck and full of dead bodies.
Mm.
I'm talking, I can't even imagine how many bodies. And I'm standing there seeing it, and I finally, it takes that long for my brain to compute what I'm looking at. The bodies in rigor mortis.
Right.
And I said to the man, "What is this?" And he goes, "Well, every morning there's so much poverty that at the end of the evening, when people that don't have a place to live, they just stop wherever they are and sleep, and they die."
Mm-hmm.
And the city sends trucks all over the city to pick up the dead. And this was, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I don't, this is unreal. Brother Buntang came and picked us up, and we started driving. We just kept driving. And he really wouldn't tell us where we were going. And Dad kept saying, "Well, where are we going?" And we actually left the city. And all of a sudden, and I don't know how to describe it, you begin to hear in the distance this vibrating noise, bzzz, like that. And then as we got louder and louder and louder, and we're looking around, what is this? And he wouldn't tell us. And all of a sudden, you round this bend, and you look ahead, and you're at the garbage dumps of Calcutta. Now, garbage dump doesn't describe it. I'm literally talking mounds of garbage, hundreds of feet high. There were mountains.
Right.
I mean, they were literal mountains. The stench, when we opened the door, I came this close to throwing up. It was that bad. I had to take my handkerchief and do that. Mother, she turned every color under the sun. And we're looking around, and then Brother Bud Tane says, "Now look at the dump. All right, look at them." And then once again, it's another one of those surreal scenes that you know what you're seeing, but your brain can't compute, because I'm looking, and then all of a sudden, you realize there are literally thousands of people climbing into this garbage looking for something to eat.
And the buzzards
Oh.
vultures flying overhead,
Oh,
landing.
yes. The sky was almost black by the vultures. And so we're gagging. The stench is absolutely horrible. We are overwhelmed by sight, sound, and smell. The senses are just overwhelmed. And then all of a sudden comes these trucks. Stop, people get out, and they start unloading food. And the next thing you know, there's a line of people, and this is one of the feeding stations.
Right.
And we're just sitting there looking at this. Before I finish all of that, you know, we talk about Calcutta, everybody's heard of Mother Teresa. And, you know, she did a nice job there. Brother Buntain reached more people in a month than she did in a year.
Oh, right.
His hospital was much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
His orphanage was probably 10 times bigger than hers. His outreach feeding program, well, here was hers, here his stratosphere. The thousands.
We helped him feed, starting at 18,000 a day,
Mhm.
18,000 every day, and went up to 23,000.
Every single day.
Yes, every day, 23,000 people.
Every
23
single day. And, you know, he had a hospital, he had a school, he had feeding programs all over the city, different points.
Mhm.
He had, of course, churches.
Yeah, evangelistic centers.
And of course, Dad preached in one of the churches. I'll never forget in the church, the kids, because he had school going on too.
Right,
And they would all come, and these were all Hindus,
right.
from Hindu families getting saved.
Yeah, he didn't limit the schools to just Christians.
No.
Buddhists, Hindus could come. I've preached in some of those. He had me preach also. And he said, we have like half of this is Hindu, the other quarter's Buddhist. We have, everybody here is welcome to come to school. We actually helped him with 44 schools. One of them we built.
Right.
We built a big wing. When I say we, I'm talking about Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. We helped him build a huge wing on a hospital. I've been to India probably 30 times, and several times with Brother Mark Montaigne, we piled around together for a week together, and he showed me these things. But the need is so great.
Well, we're going to pick that up on the second half. We got to take a break. We'll be right back. We're back. And, you know, we were talking about Calcutta, and we're going to continue on with that. When we finished watching the feeding at the garbage dumps, by this time it was getting close to lunch, and he said, we're going to take you back to the hotel, and I've got to run an errand or something. And then I'll come back and meet you at the hotel and eat. And so we went back, and I went into my room, and I walked in to the bathroom, and I looked up, and my face was black.
Right.
And I'm like, what? And I went like this,
Soot.
covered in soot. And I started looking at my shirt. I didn't notice before. And I took it off, and my neck, I remember the collar of the neck was solid black. And I mean, I jumped in it was horrible.
Yeah.
And we tried to eat lunch, but it's hard to eat
Right.
after witnessing what we saw. And then, you know, he took us to the church, hospital, the schools, and that's when he asked, could you help us? And he wanted, at that time, I think it was just a one-time situation. He wanted to build something or add something. And Daddy said yes. And then we came back, and it'll change your life.
Oh, my, yes.
Before I finish, I remember coming back. When we left Calcutta, we had to go through Paris, and we spent the night in Paris. That was the first time I'd ever been to Paris. Now, you got to understand the dichotomy of coming from a country of 1 billion people, extreme poverty, hunger, pollution.
Right.
All three of us, our eyes burned for about 4 or 5 days after we left. I had a sore throat for 2 or 3 days for all the pollution and soot
Right.
that I swallowed. We land about 10 o'clock Sunday morning in Paris. We go to the hotel. It's freezing. It had been burning up in Calcutta, and it was freezing cold in Paris. I took a shower, and I remember walking out of my hotel and just walking around the streets of Paris.
Mhm.
And I'm going in my mind over all the stuff that I saw. Like this is surreal. This is not real. I mean, I didn't know anything like this existed. And I'm in refined Paris, cultured Paris, and I see a lady who's obviously very wealthy, mink coat, diamonds. And I remember it struck me, she had a dog, and the dog had on what looked like a diamond choker, which I'm sure it wasn't, and a fur coat. And custom padded pad paws. And I remember I was walking, and I just stopped, and I'm just staring at her. And the first thing I'm thinking, what she spent on that dog would probably feed 100 people.
Right. Right.
And I got angry. I just got angry. But then I had to realize, that's, you're dealing with two different worlds. And we got back to the States. And Brother Buntain contacted Daddy and said, thank you for agreeing to help the project, whatever. And Dad said, no, I think you misunderstood. What do you need each month? He said, well, what do you mean? And Dad said, we're going to help you every month. So let's get the projects. What do you need? And I mean, they started coming in, expand the feeding program, expand the hospital, expand schools. And it finally reached a point where our investment for several years, each year was $1 million plus.
Right. Total.
Dollars.
Total per year.
Yeah, per year. The largest concentration of one country fund-wise.
Right.
And we were never able to get on television.
Well, there was 9 weeks and Brother Buntain sent the letter. We published it in the Evangelist, that it did go on in Bangladesh.
Right.
And for about 9 weeks, but then there was a government change. That station covered most of West Bengal, which is where Calcutta is in the east part of India. You say West Bengal? Yes, because Bangladesh was Bengal, and that was East Bengal, and Calcutta was West until it broke off.
Right. That's you got 3 countries: India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh that's been fighting over territories.
The number of people in the state of West Bengal, over 100 million, where Calcutta is in an area the same size as South Carolina.
100 million people.
You saw all that sea of people every day. That's what is happening that's what happened there.
It was mind-boggling.
I remember we also went to the garbage dump, and we also one morning got up real early before the sun came up, and he said, let's go to the cemetery, the main one in Calcutta. We went there, and the trucks came up with the big pots of food and everything, and there weren't very many people. But all of a sudden, as the first rays of sunlight shot over the horizon, out of this huge cemetery came hundreds and hundreds, and probably over a couple thousand people. They were mainly women, poor women with ragtag children.
Mm-hmm.
They would come with a little bowl,
Right.
Cup, and they would dish out to these lines of a couple thousand of these people every morning there.
Yeah, they served. I don't know what you would call it, but it was like what we would. If you ever go to a Mexican restaurant and you get fajitas, that corn thing that you lay
like a tortilla,
yes. But it was a bread, a kind of a thick bread, and then a cup that they fill. I guess it was hot soup or something.
It's pretty close to oatmeal, but it's a different thing.
And that's what they fed the same thing at all the locations.
Yeah.
They would prepare it in a central location, and then the trucks. I mean, he had it organized.
Yes. What struck me that morning was that after all those huge pots were emptied and people were being fed, this was their only meal that day. Yeah. Then the little children, after they ate theirs and the pots were empty, they would pick up a rock, get in the pots, and scrape the sides of it and lick it to get a little bit more food.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that's the need there. That I remember going to the orphanage, and your father had been there.
Yes, I remember. I was there too.
Well, when I got there, Brother Buntain took me there, and so they have a nice picture of Brother Swaggart. It's the only picture in the orphanage on the wall, and these kids, they're just so loving and kind, and they said, "You're from Brother Jimmy Swaggart?" And I said, "Yes." And we just love him. We love him. And they had me sit on the front porch of this big orphanage, and all of them came out, and they brought a guitar, and it was covered in felt or a blanket, and they unwrapped. They said, "This is the guitar that Jimmy Swaggart played." I said, well, I was just, the way you talk with children. Well, who is Jimmy Swaggart? Oh, he's the greatest preacher of the gospel and the greatest gospel guitar player. There were no other instruments.
What happened was that we were there at the orphanage, and one of the I don't know if it was one of the workers or one of the kids had this guitar, and Dad was fooling around with them, and he picked up the guitar, and Daddy can't play the guitar. Well, he knows some
strummed it. He
knows some chords, and so he just did some funny things in the chord, and they were all laughing and all that, but it was one of those. I remember that after we got back, that you don't sleep good.
Yeah, right.
For about a month, because that was the first time that I was confronted with extreme poverty.
Right.
I mean, poverty that it exists, but you don't know it exists. And after spending 4 days in that, and then coming back, and then you land in Paris, of all places, where a little sandwich would cost $20.
Right.
And you see the world, the dichotomy of those who have it and those that don't. And Brother Buntain probably had the greatest impact on me of any, whether a preacher or missionary or whatever.
Right. He he preached the gospel.
Oh, absolutely.
His main thrust was the gospel. But when you're in that need, you have to do something about it. And thousands came to the Lord. In the 44 schools that we helped, 12,879 students were in those schools at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And through all those years, tens of thousands of students, Hindus and Buddhists, who came to know Jesus as their Savior. Tens of thousands of Christians came out of those schools and are in Indian society. You know, the Indian people are some of the most intelligent in the world.
Absolutely.
But now with the gospel, they are a loving, kind, joyous people. It's great to be with them.
It was a truly a life-changing experience. Well, we got to go. We've come to the end of another program, and I hope you've enjoyed this walk down memory lane, and to give you a better understanding of all the different aspects of the gospel that this ministry has been involved in over the years and is involved in today. Tell others about the program. We'll be back next week, same time, with a brand new segment of Backstage. Thank you, and God bless you.
Sing it, fellas. Jesus got a hold of my life and he won't let me go. Jesus got into my heart, he got into my soul. I used to be oh so sad, now I'm free and glad.
So on behalf of Mark, the burden that he has, and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, that loves these just as much as he loves your little boy or your little girl, we say thank you. And we say God bless you.